Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about the next generation of actuaries. Who are they? What do they care about? And how do they plan to use their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world? Joining us for this discussion to shed some light on these questions from the other side of the world is one of our most recently qualified actuaries, Ben Howe. Ben qualified as a fellow through the Actuaries Institute here in Australia, where he's worked in actuarial consulting across long tail reserving and pricing, perils modelling, and government projects. But Ben's currently working in the London market for a Lloyds syndicate as a reserving actuary, and he's certified as an actuary through the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries in the UK. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and thank you for that introduction.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation with you from the other side of the world and across time zones almost. It's the evening here and the morning there for you. I mean, what an adventure that you're having with your fellowship qualification. As an experienced actuary who has never worked outside of Australia myself, I'm quite jealous and I can't wait to hear about some of your adventures. But first, Ben, let me ask you the question I ask all my guests. Ben, how do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
Sure. So I would say in terms of an actuarial superpower, I would say it's a curiosity to learn. I think that probably before qualifying, I had the idea in my head that once I had qualified, I would know everything. And I think you quickly realize that that's not the case. There's always changes in the market, there's changes in maybe the portfolios you're looking at, there's broader regulatory changes, professional changes, or maybe you're working with different teams that you don't have experiences with before.
Mm.
So I think that curiosity to learn will help you go out of your way and be independent, be insightful and questioning to really try to understand what's going on and not just take the view, oh, I'm an actuary, I therefore am just going to know everything, which I think can probably not be the best approach.
Probably not. And it's funny that you say that because, we work so hard to get qualified. You think that when you get there, you will feel like you know everything.
Yeah.
But it's really just the start, isn't it? It's still just, you
Yes.
just keep learning. So I'm glad that that curiosity is your superpower because I think that's going to stand you in good stead as you use that fellowship in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Particularly working in a new market, a new way of doing things and new approaches, I think it's a very
Mm,
useful skill to have.
mm. It is a very useful skill to have. So tell me, Ben, when did you know that you wanted to become an actuary?
Ooh. So I would say it was probably towards the end of high school. I was really looking for sort of a career that would combine some maths, some problem solving, and a bit of business. And I felt like actuarial studies or becoming an actuary would kind of tie up those points nicely.
Mm.
And I also did attend a firm visit to get a little bit of a taster
Sure.
because I thought it might be a bit ambitious to just, sign up for this year-long degree with not really having any idea of what an actuary does or is, just some
Mm.
vague high-level points. And I got an insight in kind of the typical working day of an actuary, although you could
Wow.
probably argue how typical is the working day of an actuary. But nevertheless, it was really interesting seeing what people would do, the sort of problems that would arise, and that kind of helped cement my view to do actuarial studies at university and pursue a career in that.
Wow. So it was in high school that you were actually able to see an actuary in action for the first time.
Yeah, I think a few of the firms can organize
Mm.
like there's career visits or there's like one day events. And I think it was
Oh,
run via one of the universities and one of the firms. I don't know if that still happens. This was a few years ago now,
yeah.
but it was quite useful because I went to a school outside of Sydney. So
Uh-huh.
I probably wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise to go.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. And I know that raising the profile of the profession is something that you've been also paying forward because you're part of the Actuaries Institute Ambassador Program. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that and your involvement in that program.
Sure. Yeah, so I've always enjoyed volunteering. It's always something that's been close sort of to my heart. I was a volunteer firefighter for a number of years because I
Brilliant.
lived in the Blue Mountains for a period of time. So I was quite active with that. But after really moving to Sydney and committing to the work, I just wasn't reasonably able to do that anymore.
Mhm.
It's a long commute to get up to the mountains,
Mm.
and I was really looking for something new. And I distinctly remember that with my friends and colleagues at the start of university, it really would have been good to have some guidance and have those discussions because I felt
Mm.
like a lot of us were studying to become actuaries, but we had no idea what an actuary really was or did.
Mm.
And we couldn't always talk to people to get a clear answer. So I thought, look, this would be a great way I could promote the profession. I could engage with university and even high school students and hope to provide them sort of some independent guidance and
Mm.
insights, to what sort of lies ahead for them in their future if they choose to go down this route to become an actuary.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I expressed interest. I joined the program, and I've presented a number of career workshops, universities, high schools, and just, yeah, listening to people, giving them some guidance, having discussions, and it's been really interesting and rewarding.
Wow, fantastic. And so, for those that are not familiar with the ambassador program, because it's only been around for a couple of years,
Yeah.
what are some of the key activities of that program?
Yeah, so look, I really do think it varies depending on your involvement. So
Okay.
I joined as an education ambassador. So I guess
Oh.
my kind of purview was really focusing on the education side of it, but I think they have
Mm.
other roles as well.
Mhm.
And it was quite clear. So they provide you some initial training, sort of expectations, what general points they would like you to discuss, but then it really is kind of up to you. The Institute will give you an idea of what sort of events are coming up, and then you also have your own input on what you would like to present and what you would like to discuss.
Mm.
So you do have the opportunity to get quite involved and tailor it to your own personal experience, which I think helps make it a bit more relatable.
Yeah. Sounds like a really great initiative because I think one of the challenges we have as the actuarial profession is just getting our name out there and being able to have people understand what we do. I know when I started university studying actuarial studies, I still didn't really know what actuaries did. And I think that being able to demystify that and to be able to promote the profession and explain it to other people, I think is a really powerful initiative.
Yeah, I would definitely agree about that. And yeah, I think if other people are looking to join, I think the Institute is always keen on having more
Mm.
members. So
For sure. And I love that you have always enjoyed volunteering. I didn't know you were a volunteer firefighter. What a really important role that you have played in the community. I'm a huge fan of volunteering myself because I think it's always win-win. My volunteering work has also been, within the profession, but also within the community. I've done a lot of telephone counselling. I've been on the phones for Lifeline, that kind of thing. But I
yeah.
think that I wonder what your take is on this, Ben. But as a volunteer, always felt that I get more out of the volunteering experience than I feel like I'm giving. I feel like it's one of those experiences that, I always get a lot out of.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just think I'm one of those people that always needs a challenge and needs something new and interesting and exciting.
Mhm.
And that, the firefighting for me really allowed me to do that.
Yeah, I
I
bet.
actually thought it was quite funny because I got quite into it at one stage and I was taking all of these modules and exams to
Really?
become like a truck driver and advanced firefighter. But
Wow.
the irony was I was failing those exams, but I was passing the university exams. So I was like, oh no, I'm not having a good run here. But
Oh dear.
uh,
Okay, so you like the challenge, you like the excitement. So
yeah,
an actuarial career has been a good choice if those are the sorts of things that you enjoy. Can you
yeah,
tell us, Ben, what's been the highlight of your actuarial career to date?
sure. So I would say for me, it would be a little bit probably more left of field than I guess traditional actuarial work. So I would say it's building and developing models to look at natural hazard risk.
Mm.
So that's something I've always been interested. I was interested in geography in high school, and I got to look at, natural hazard risk when I did the firefighting, when you'd look at, topographic maps and consider, where the fire might come from, what the intensity would be. So being able to use, those skill sets with my actuarial training was quite interesting.
Mm.
I had the opportunity to build a range and develop a range of models to look at natural perils risk and try to relate that to clients' clients' portfolios and exposures and help them to understand the shape of their risk geographically. So I got to use different tools and software such as R and Python and some geospatial mapping software, which was very cool.
Very
And
cool.
it was just a really great way of communicating the complexity of risk in a different method. So instead of your, typical charts and tables, you could have this really nice map that really shows like a nice clear graduation of risk, and it really tells the message clearly to, a range of audiences, regardless of their own training and technical knowledge.
Mm, fantastic. So not only were you able to use your volunteering experience and your, other domain knowledge, if we use that terminology, to bring to
Yeah.
an actuarial problem, you were also able to then communicate the results of that in a different way, using mapping and different ways of presenting data and results. To a range of stakeholders. So, some really powerful skills and some really powerful experiences that you've had in your quite short actuarial career to date.
Well, you've got to keep it interesting though.
You do. And it sounds like you've done an excellent job of that. And yeah, I love that real example because people often talk about, how do you move into a non-traditional area or, outside financial services? How do you learn the domain knowledge? And I mean, you've got a great story about how you've learnt that domain knowledge through your volunteering and your community work. So you've been able to combine your passions and your community experience with your actuarial career. So that's fantastic. Okay, so topic of today, Next Gen Actuaries. You have recently qualified. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was the process of getting qualified like for you?
Do you want the honest answer or?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, I would say if we're speaking candidly, it was definitely challenging at some points. I'm probably, fortunate that I sat it under the new syllabus, so maybe it was a little bit different to other actuaries that might have sat it under the old syllabus. So no cap, which was the 8-hour exam. So
I
definitely not
remember.
complaining
I
there.
did the cap.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but no, I would say it was good. So I'd say that yeah, it took me a few years, but I did manage to clear them relatively quickly. I'd say for me, what worked well is I just at the outset, I was very realistic. So a couple of months before the exam, I probably overdid it, but I had a very detailed study plan of exactly what I wanted to accomplish each week. And I,
Mhm.
logged the time I spent studying each given week to try to hold myself accountable
Yeah.
because I felt it was really easy to get caught up with work and study and life, and then you don't really know how much you're actually covering until you get quite close to the exams.
Yeah.
Uh, I also thought it was quite worthwhile. I kept in touch with people from university that were sitting, similar exams to myself.
Mhm.
And so that way you could get a different viewpoint, for example, if you're thinking about how you might tackle a certain exam question.
Mhm.
So I think with these exams, it's good not to do them all on your own, so to speak. It's good because in the workplace, you would have colleagues to bounce ideas off and get different points of view.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a lot to do all that study and preparation on your own. There
Mhm.
still is a reasonable amount you need to do on your own, sit the exams on your own, but
Yeah.
I think it's just useful, being able to bounce ideas off other people.
Mm. That's really good advice. So not just, so being organized and having a really clear plan about what you're going to do and when, but also collaborating and staying connected with other students and sharing some ideas and learning together.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that advice, in terms of probably being a bit more organized, probably relates to when you're working and studying, when you're doing the last few exams. When you're at university, you've probably got a bit more grace in that sense, given you're full time at university. You might be
Mm,
working or doing internships or something like a co-op program, but I
mm,
guess the focus is on university.
mm,
It's probably more challenging when you're working full time, and particularly if
mm,
you have a busy period at work and you
mm.
still need to meet those requirements, as well as finding time for study and then just general life.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So when
but
you,
you've been through it. I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
you're well aware.
So when you said it was challenging, your candid answer to that was that it was challenging. Was the challenge that juggling that with work, was that part of the challenge, having to coordinate everything? Or was it the challenge of the exams themselves?
Yeah, so look, I definitely think the exams are difficult. There's no question about it. But yeah, if you're having a busy period at work, you could be working a reasonable number of hours and then you're still trying to find 10, 20 hours to study
Mm,
after you're really quite tired from work and don't want to do it. And you just need to
mm,
have that discipline and hold yourself accountable and just do it
mm,
anyways,
mm,
because
mm.
you really don't want to have to fail and then have to resit this thing. You just want to clear it,
Just want to
move
get
on with your
through.
life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Some great advice. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so the question I'm busting to ask you, I know that this year you have moved to the UK and you're working
yeah.
at Lloyds. Tell us what that's been like.
Sure. Yeah, so maybe I can just give a little bit of context to what actually Lloyd's is, because unless you've probably worked in maybe the commercial space in general insurance in Australia, you might not be all that familiar with it. So Lloyd's is just a marketplace where people buy and sell insurance. So it's actually quite old, but today it's sort of known as the place for really taking on kind of specialist and niche risks. So there's lots of cases of weird and wonderful things being insured at Lloyd's. So I currently work for a syndicate, and a syndicate is essentially an insurance company that just provides insurance in the marketplace that is Lloyd's. And that's been very interesting because the focus there is really working with the underwriters who are the forward-facing part of the business, who really underwrite and write the risks that we're willing to take on. And I'd say it was definitely a change for me career-wise because I'd only worked in consulting firms.
Mm,
So typically an insurance company or say a syndicate would come to you with a problem, you would solve that problem, and they would, implement it on their side, and you wouldn't necessarily get to see it. Like there would be that clear separation at the end of the project. So really working internally at an insurance company with the teams and seeing how, those projects evolve and then how that's embedded within the organization going forward has been very interesting.
mm. That sounds wonderful. And it sounds like you've really diversified your work experience, not just in terms of geographic location, but also in terms of the actual type of work that you're doing as well, which sounds like that meets your need for challenge and keeping it exciting.
Yeah, definitely. So currently I'm working as a reserving actuary, so there's definitely more of a focus on reserving.
Mhm.
But the training and experience I had in Australia was very applicable. The fundamentals are the same. I mean, insurance is insurance regardless of
Yeah.
wherever you go. But there have definitely been some differences. But I think it's really interesting because you would just get exposure to different classes and products and maybe different teams that you wouldn't otherwise get.
Mm.
So we have some really niche and interesting classes like marine or aviation. So we might be talking about some satellite losses you might need to consider. How would you reserve for those? How would you explain to the underwriters how that book of business has been performing? So it is definitely quite interesting and something that's new. But like you
Mm.
said, always up for the challenge. So
Excellent. That sounds like a great challenge and very worthwhile experience for you as well. So it's been great hearing a little bit about your journey to fellowship, Ben, and also your experience, your volunteer experience, and your experience of getting qualified, and also moving to the UK and having this new experience as at a Lloyd's syndicate. I want to finish the interview with one question, and it's this: what's one tip that you'd have for actuaries still working towards fellowship?
I would say, as cliche as it sounds, enjoy the journey. I think I definitely at times had the view this is probably not the most enjoyable part of my life, but it will be much better once I'm done. But I think you spend so much time, studying and working, you really do have to embrace it and enjoy it because it's going to make it that much, it'll just go so much faster and be so much more enjoyable as if you go, oh, I have 3 months, I need to get through this. And it drains you very quickly, I think, if you have that view. So I'd just enjoy the process and the journey because you will learn a lot and it will push you, but it will develop you and kind of grow you into the actuary that you want to become.
Wonderful advice. Enjoy the journey. Ben, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful hearing your experience and your pathway to fellowship. And I look forward to seeing you continuing to apply your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world going forward. So thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Julia, for having me, and hopefully I said one or two things that were interesting.
Lots of interesting. Thanks, Ben.